Well, this year has been shit. Sorry for such a long break between videos, but also I'm totally not, because this past year has just been the worst in pretty much every facet of my life. Just be thankful I'm here and not an urn ranting beyond the grave. Let's move on to happier topics, shall we? Like my favorite fun, happy game, Deltarune, with my favorite comfort characters like Ralsei. Oh, okay. Oh no. Well, what about Suzy? She's always a delight. Oh, that's even worse. Turns out the first 2 chapters were all about happiness, and this time, it's all about suffering. But in an effort to maintain a semblance of organization, let's just gather my thoughts and organize them based on chapter to chapter. Consider this as a good precursor to a future video essay I'm planning just about this game. That said, please listen as I talk your ear off about Deltarune. Starting with Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is mostly a fun romp with a few dramatic stakes. I love the different gameplay mechanics and the Legend of Zelda's style dungeons and arenas. Overall, while very formulaic, I really enjoyed it because of these different game mechanics. But I also understood why the 2 chapters came out together, because Chapter 3's ending has more shock value and ends on a cliffhanger, ergo breaking the formula. Several parts of Chapter 3 were tough-ish, at least for me, gameplay-wise. Felt really bad for Chris because the person puppeting them was not very good. I failed a cooking minigame like 5 times. Everyone also really loves Mr. Tenna, and I do as well. Personally, he isn't at the same levels of love of Spanton, but he could get there, especially since his message of TB being slowly worked out of our lives just really works. It actually made me nostalgic for those days of cable television, especially when Tenna was talking about how in the old days, Azriel, Chris, Noel, December, and their family would chill and watch stuff in front of the TV. As a younger sibling whose older sibling went off to college when this game started, and someone who's just growing more aware of how old technology brings me more comfort than new technology at times, just that nostalgia permeating throughout my entire life, I feel Tenna and also Chris's pain. Speaking of, let's talk about the fun game. Starting with, honestly, my personal favorite, although it's very hard to choose now, Ralsei. Ralsei is still just an adorable, loving fluff hugger. I feel so vindicated in ignoring all the Ralsei's evil theories. Ralsei is very clearly, from the start, been an in-game tutorial made for our purposes. He literally teaches us how to fight, and with the help of Suzy, and if you choose to, us, is learning and accepting free will. Let's also remember that Toby has made it clear since Undertale that if there is an all-consuming evil present in the world, it will most definitely be the player before any of the characters. Just like how if there's an all-consuming good, it'll be the player who influences that. Seeing Ralsei experiment with leading and the power that comes from it made me really happy. It felt good to give even a little bit of autonomy to him. That also made me be a lot more resistant to his prompts of seeing what Suzy was up to and trying to guide the player, because I wanted him to expand from his very restrictive position as a tutorial goat. It also made me realize that what Ralsei was saying to Chris when we would leave was probably something along the lines of, oh, you know, Chris, you should just follow what the player is saying because that's their purpose. Speaking of giving autonomy, I think Chris in this chapter continues to act as quote-unquote neutrally as they always have done. I put quote-unquote because if you've been paying attention, you see body language that Chris exhibits, trying to break free from your control during the game, especially in Chapter 2 after the Spampton fight. I think after Chapter 2, I started to play a bit more aligned to what I think Chris would choose, kind of trying to go at their own pace rather than my own. I doubt this will have any impact on anything, and I don't expect it to. It honestly is really impossible to fix the situation. I mean, I don't know how willing and thankful I'd be to a foreign entity possessing my body. At least they're a nice entity, even if they are. I wouldn't care. They're still possessing my body. but if I can make my presence less intrusive, then I'll try. In all honesty, I would totally be fine if I was just a floating heart chilling next to Chris as they live their silly little life. Suffice to say, seeing Chris and Susie be chaotic comrades was really cathartic. Even though I'm a foreign object who's possessing Chris, I want them to be truly happy, even if we as a player aren't there. I'm so glad Susie is there to be a constant source of friendship. Her taking the star from Azriel's side to give Chris the Susie award is just one of the many things that made me smile about this pair. Susie remains the light of this chapter. Her tenacity, her resilience, her determination to keep going and keep fighting legitimately made me more determined because she was there. And I think for Chris and Rousey, she has the same effect. That's when I got this feeling, this terrible feeling that Susie, the glue of our party, was probably not long for this world. But that's just silly, right? Chapter 4, understandably, starts off pretty dismally, and the tone is very somber. But again, Susie's presence makes everything better in every way. Another instance where I tried to give Chris more autonomy was ignoring the church service, because Chris had been to church before. And in doing so, I got injected straight up with serotonin. Susie and Chris's friendship, which I can't help but talk about, is the core of Deltarune. Keyword friendship, okay? Susie and Noelle all the way. I just love their interactions and how these two rebellious teenagers collaborate the best ways to make their mark on the small town and eventually be heroes. Their friendship, I think, also hits home because it reminds me of my best friend and how we were also weird kids who initially bonded over nerdy stuff like video games, art, Minecraft. Love ya, Bob. The dark world they experience, the atmosphere and lighting and musical introduction already indicated to me that chapter 4 is probably gonna give the same impact for me in terms of scale and world building that chapter 2 did, and I was right. Chapter 4 is the Deltarune chapters of Deltarune chapters. It upsets the status quo, builds off existing dramatic tension, and manages to integrate new information that devastates and jerks the fabric of this very fragile existence. One instance of this is the reveal of Rousey's room, which made my blood run cold. A lot of elements in this game start feeling like horror. His excitement over us existing near him in the beginning, and his kind of calm and distanced attitude in chapter 2 made more sense after seeing this. Gives me such, I have been tasked to do something and I will achieve it completely. Rousey's blasé attitude, Noelle's mother, and newfound autonomy are all really strong plot points that get introduced and played with here, especially when we go to Noelle's house and see Rousey's room. It's almost like autonomy is an integral part of Deltarune's themes. Another thing that I really loved was Susie's, again, resilience and growing bond with Noelle. Loved the whole sneaking around Chris segment. I thoroughly enjoyed it because it felt genuinely tense as Chris was on the phone call with the knight. Sneaking into an angel doll and interacting with Susie and Noelle felt really vulnerable and scary because I have no idea how they would even react to an entity like the player. Would they skewer me? Could I even talk to them? I don't think so. Part of me wonders if we will ever see what happens when a human absorbs a monster soul. I mean, we still don't know that answer, even in Undertale's universe. But that's a pretty morbid thought. On to Chris working with the knight, which was expected, but still pretty shocking to me. I think this is honestly when I started wondering if maybe Susie was fated to die. Because why else would Chris be so invested in preventing Susie from getting the guitar? So much so that they started working with the knight to prevent Susie from progressing. It honestly felt like Chris knew the prophecy or knew of it vaguely. Maybe the knight told him, I'm not sure. Speaking of the knight, they're in my head probably Noelle's mom, or either December holiday, or just another person entirely. I mean, what's the point of a mystery if I try to solve it now? I'm unsure about that part. Anyways, the atmosphere is dialed up once you actually enter Dark World and hear the angels or princesses singing, which is really beautiful. I can't forget to talk about Gerson, the old turtle who we finally get a proper sprite of. It's not lost on me that while he sells us stuff, we don't get a special shop sprite, and in Undertale, that's the only thing we get. All these little details are very fun nods that are continuously prevalent, especially in this chapter. Some other examples are the candy bowl. Susie's mini arc about healing was really essential to, again, making this group feel like real friends. I've had so many moments when I inadvertently hurt another friend's feelings, not because of what I said or with any intentions of malice, but because of what they've heard and experienced before. Made me happy to see her get over it with Gerson's help. Another scene that stood out to me visually was the confrontation between Susie and Rousey about his nature. The lightning and shadow guising Rousey so only their silhouettes are shown. Rousey's ambivalence unclear to Chris and us, where we're wondering whether it's malice or pure neutrality, eventually revealed to be an overwhelming depression, or what I call meta-knowledge depression. In Undertale, Sans was the sufferer. It seems Rousey is here. Unfortunately, Rousey cannot take as distant a view as our resident Tumblr sexy man himself, nor can he really stop you from acting a certain way. It's interesting that doing the weird route isn't something he interferes with. Maybe he does? I don't know. There's no way I'm doing that route. And it's even more interesting that he just recommends us to be nice, but does not step in himself to enforce it on anyone. In particular, apart from Susie, I guess, in chapter 1, Rousey's strange behavior makes perfect sense considering how much he knows and how the weight of that knowledge can crush a person, much less someone who is so aware of our presence and the effect that it has on the world. I mean, he literally talks to us in the death screen. Chris, in this chapter, showed so much resistance to us, it made me kind of amused. I'm sorry, I know this is a really bad thing for them, but I'm the player, okay? I'm a distant force. It made me laugh. Initially, I was really scared and kind of just really upset. I was like, oh man, I don't want to do this either. But when they ripped us out and we saw them in the kitchen drinking chocolate milk and being wild and playing that weird game of cat and mouse in the closet on Pride Month, no less. And hearing their conversation with the knight, it was the first time where I kind of thought, does Chris possess bad intentions? Like, are they truly trying to murk us? And that's when the thoughts about Susie dying came to the forefront, because I do not believe Chris has bad intentions, but I do understand that they would do bad things if it meant keeping Susie safe, who we've seen they have an intense attachment to, I mean, for good reason. I think my fear of Chris really faded as all they did to me was smacking me with a hockey stick, and when they stopped once they realized Susie and Noelle were talking about us, hilarious. Chapter 4 is also elevated because of its design shift after Susie opens the Dark Fountain herself. We're attacked by this statue in this beautiful sound-based maze, and given a look at some familiar mechanics. And don't think I missed the red coloring on that statue. The music gets more serious, the set pieces less fun and goofy, and more focused entirely on these characters. And I think there's so many scenes that really stuck out to me in this chapter. Credits to Toby and his team, but I need to just lightning speed through them because I don't want to be here all day. Some more Undertale references, like the tsundere cactus. I'll never forget that dialogue. The tall sink that was cut in half. Okay, let me in Papyrus's house. Toriel's outfit being church and being what you see her wearing in Undertale. Chris finally playing the piano after so much anticipation. The candy bowl nostalgia, you know I took it all. Getting to play his theme on every piano, I will never stop. the walk towards the night as each character in the gang takes turns getting hit. And I want to talk about this scene in particular because of how impactful it is because of the game mechanics. The heart sections only hit Chris in almost everything else, but now they hit everyone, as in they start switching with Chris to take the hit themselves. It works so well because of the music, because of their bond, because of how the night is such this overwhelming force, how everyone is so serious, the lighting, beautiful scene. Another thing was the freaking Titan animation and emergence, the significance of those eyes in chapter 1 when he first entered their dark world, all beautifully animated and done. I'm playing on the Switch, not the Switch 2, just the Switch, and the beautiful detail of just the eyes being everywhere, the darkness, the border art, so pretty. Not to mention the Titan design itself, how the eyes would flash red when they were hurt, and the introduction of interesting climbing mechanics which upped the stakes and helped make the game and fight with the Titan way less monotonous. The fight with the Titan was really hard though. I don't know if anyone else found it hard, but I did. The scene that honestly trumps as my favorite part of this game, or any chapter, is the scene where the prophecy is revealed and Susie lashes out. The way that we are stuck with Chris and Chris is running to try and catch up, and Rousey runs ahead because he knows what's waiting for them. The way that we don't even see the prophecy, we just hear the shatter of glass and Susie standing with a bloody fist. The way Rousey just breaks down and starts crying. Susie puts her hand on his cheek and leaves his face bloody. And what I believe to be the most impactful thing is the first inclination of Chris's changing opinion of Rousey. The first entirely voluntary hug from Chris towards Rousey without the player's prompt. The way they hug him and just say you don't always have to smile. And Rousey's response, Toby and his team know what they're doing, and it's sickening. The scene, just beautiful. I hope everyone got to appreciate this by themselves before watching this video. I think what makes this the most impactful scene is again how Chris has softened on the go. They realize just how much Rousey is at the behest of the player just as they are. That he didn't choose to resemble their brother. Rousey just is himself. Not really a lightener and not really a naive and ignorant darkener. He has been stuck in this one place alone for all his life and tasked with something so supreme of helping us while also keeping the knowledge of how it ends in order to protect us. In this way, Rousey is probably the person most comparable to Chris, who at least can see how they are being controlled. Rousey has no friggin' clue. He just knows his purpose and that he must carry it out. Such a rigid protocol must be devastating to experience, especially considering darkeners are quite literally made for our purposes. So I've said a lot, and this is probably where I'll end it for now, but expect an in-depth analysis of autonomy and its significance in Deltarune as soon as I can script it. If I repeat things in that video from this one, just pretend it isn't happening, please. Anyway, these are all the brain rot thoughts circling in my head since I finished the chapters. I'm off to replay it now. See you in another life, brother.